Hi, everyone. I'm being driven insane by technology and life and anything else that could probably drive me insane. Sorry we're so late. My laptop is a mess and my Wi-Fi is a mess, but I figured it out. Anyway, welcome to Where Are All the Women? We're back after being gone for, I don't know how long, like 3 weeks or a month?
3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, so sorry about that, everyone. And obviously, once again, we've switched days. So we've switched from Wednesday nights to Tuesday nights. Mary Lou, I think I explained this on the first stream back, but I did solo because Mary Lou was unable to join on account of having pneumonia.
So sick.
Brutal.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's what happens when you have to experience winter, eh?
Yeah, it's just my husband was away dealing with his elderly parents, and I was, I gotta give him some credit for how much he props me up. Like I was like, it'll be fine. See you later. I was excited to have the house to myself, and then I had to take care of the dog by myself. I had to deal with the house by myself. I think I just fell apart. I got sick, and there was nobody to bring me soup. There was no one to bring me tea.
Oh, wow. Do you know, what do you think that I do in my life with my dogs and when I get sick? And
yeah, it's sad. It's really sad.
I mean, to be fair, I think you're also very busy at work. So
I'm really busy, and I think I couldn't be this.
You have
busy.
Like a house husband taking care of things while you're at work. Is that how it works?
It is. What I realized was I can't work this hard without having a support person at home. It was just too much. It was crazy.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, because I was trying to make fun of you, being like, are you really that useless? You can't make your own soup. But if I was, out of the house working in your clinic as much as you are, I would probably also need a house husband to be taking care of things at home, and then dogs, and then me. I'm lucky that I get to work at home, so I'm just always taking care of the dogs, which is to say they're, cuddling with me while I work, so it's not too bad.
I forgot to feed the dog a couple of times, but luckily the dog started off the process obese and is now at a more normal weight due to my negligence. It's just bad for all of us. Foxy and I had a hard time without Phil here.
Well, I feel bad for the dogs. I feel bad for you a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, all sorts of things, I guess, are easier if you can work at home. I spent, like 7 or 8 hours making bone broth last night while I was working. So
right.
If I had gotten sick, I would have been all set. I've got like 8 jars of it in my fridge, which I unfortunately am not able to mail to Albuquerque on short notice.
Right. Maybe Elon Musk will make some kind of teleportation device and you can send me bone broth in the future. But hopefully I won't get sick again. I haven't been sick like that in a long time. I took a week and a half off work. I'm a workaholic. That's a lot for me to take a lot of time off work.
Yeah, that is a lot. A week and a half is a ton of time to take off work. I feel like the last time I had to take time off work on account of a cold, it was like a couple days or something like that. And then, and of course I had to have like some dental stuff done. And then what the hell is going on in this stupid universe where everything is like psychotic and shitty right now?
Everything is psychotic and shitty. That's what's going on. I got really tired.
Thing? Is it a planetary thing?
Well, I hear a bunch of planets are in retrograde, that Mercury's in retrograde and many other planets. So everything's moving backwards. Nothing's moving forward. I got really tired of people asking me if I had COVID. That was rough. Like it just inflamed me more and probably delayed my healing to be asked a million times if I had COVID. I'm like, who cares? I'm sick. Does it matter? Doesn't matter what I have.
What difference would it make? Like, I know it's so funny. I remember asking people that because I was so confused about people telling me that we all got COVID. And I was like, first of all, how do you know that? Like, I don't understand. Like, I was like, I don't understand how you know that you have COVID versus the flu or a cold or whatever. Also, who cares? You're sick.
Right.
You treat it all the same way. Oh, well, different medications. I'm like, no, if you're sick, you rest and you drink bone broth and like tea, and there's not
Yeah.
that much that you could do. I mean, if you feel like, and if you need medication, you take the medication that lists your symptoms on it. It's so
Exactly.
weird. It's weird. Like,
Right.
what's the big difference here? It's so strange to me.
I don't like,
COVID.
it's like,
What does that mean
don't
to you?
like it that people are still playing COVID, Yeah. Anyway, we're all better. We're here. We're here on Tuesdays now. It's all good.
Lord. Anyway, yeah. Where are all
Yeah.
the women? I've been through like emotional hell for the past 2 weeks. I'm sure you have been also with the stuff with your husband's parents. Thanks everyone for joining us, by the way. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And my Team Turf t-shirt, which I continue to need to wear. Sometimes I think, this is all over. Everybody's a turf now. We've all come back to our sanity, but we have not all come back to our sanity. So I'm going to continue to wear my Team Turf t-shirt, which you can buy if you so desire if you go to meganmurphy.ca and click the shop tab. It's over there. A nice Christmas present for all your turfy family members, which I hope you have many of.
Right.
I still think that transgenderism is on its way out. I feel like, usually I'm not a super optimistic person. I don't think. I mean, I'm non-binary, so sometimes I'm cynical, sometimes I'm optimistic. But I did, when Trump won the presidency, and passed all the executive orders and, freed speech so that, between him and Elon, we were allowed to say turfy things on the internet again. I thought, okay, this is for sure on its way out. And then, these countries started, banning puberty blockers finally and cross-sex hormones for minors. Thank God. I've had a lot of hope, but there still is quite a bit of pushback, and we still have, I think, a lot of struggles in terms of protecting women's spaces. That seems to be the big thing. I mean, the trans kids thing, I think, really is moving. The fact that, New Zealand recently banned puberty blockers, which I think is big, because New Zealand and Canada are very, very similar politically. And so to me, that's big. And the fact that Danielle Smith in Alberta is holding strong on her legislation, which will protect sports, will keep males out of female sports, and will, restore parental rights so that there's no more, secret transing of kids at school without parental knowledge. And again, we'll ban puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and trans surgeries for minors. But, she's under a lot of ridiculous attacks for doing so, but she seems unbothered by that, and is doing more to ensure that legislation, if the bill does pass, will be protected, because all these activist organizations, of course, are coming after her and trying to mount legal challenges. It's so funny to listen to the complaints of those who are angry at Danielle Smith in particular for trying to pass this legislation, because all of a sudden they're very concerned about freedom and constitutional rights.
Yeah. Right.
Which I'm like, I don't like those, that wouldn't apply, in my opinion, to minors when we're talking about these kinds of surgeries and, sterilizing kids, mutilating kids. We're talking about minors. So I don't think that minors actually do have the right or the freedom to choose to take puberty blockers and all these hormones and have these surgeries, because they don't know what they're doing and can't consent to such things when they don't understand the repercussions.
And these are not choices that are just in the repertoire of human freedom. Like, you have to go to a mad scientist to access this stuff, right? Like, people can't do this to themselves. They have to find some crazy medical provider to sterilize them as a child and give them cross-sex hormones as a child and give them Lupron and other drugs that are used to chemically castrate pedophiles and treat invasive prostate cancer. Like, this isn't, to me, this isn't about freedom. It's about it's criminal for the medical establishment to be in offering this stuff. You don't have the freedom to say, I want to have my eyes gouged out because I feel like I'm a blind person trapped in a sighted person's body. No doctor will provide that treatment for you under the guise of providing medical care, right? Like it's so far beyond, it's not the right discussion to frame this as freedom.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense. But also these are the exact same people who were in favor of removing the charter rights of Canadians during COVID to ensure that they could enforce the vaccine mandates and the lockdowns indefinitely.
Right.
And who, wanted to jail their neighbors for having grandma over for Christmas dinner. Like, it's just totally insane. These people don't give a shit about freedom. They're anti-free speech to start with. Totally. And, it just seems so sick to talk about this as a freedom issue, as though, they're restricting, like, who are they restricting the choices of? They're like, these laws restrict the choices of adults to do something to kids. Kids, again, don't have the right to do this or even the ability to do this to themselves. It's very funny to watch people talking about puberty online. People really seem to not understand what puberty is or what the purpose of puberty is, or maybe they're pretending to not understand. Some of them surely must not understand. There's legions of adults who think that puberty blockers are totally harmless. And I don't think that you would think that puberty blockers were harmless if you understood how puberty worked and what puberty was for.
Well, they're not harmless. We know there have already been countless lawsuits from women who had true precocious puberty, who were given these to stop them from getting their periods when they were 7, who are now suing because their bones are breaking in adulthood. They live in chronic pain. They're upset. They would have rather gone through precocious puberty. Like, we've known for decades that these are not harmless drugs. We have all the data from women going to fertility clinics who are given these drugs to stop their menstrual cycle and then restart to get on an IVF schedule. And those women tell us how horrible they feel on these drugs. I have no idea how this cognitive dissonance continues to exist in the minds of people. Like, there's stacks of evidence that these are not harmless drugs. But yeah, you don't need to go through puberty, or the idea that you can somehow induce a cross-sex puberty in someone after stopping their natural puberty. It's madness.
Yeah, there were so many weird tweets insisting that these kids would just, so you'd go on puberty blockers temporarily, so that the kid could decide. It's almost never temporary. All of the studies have shown that what happens when you put a kid on puberty blockers, they're, very likely, like most likely, to continue on to take hormones and to get these trans surgeries. But yeah, insisting that the purpose was so that they would go through puberty as the opposite sex, as though that's like a thing possible. That's possible. So there was one tweet that I saw among many that said, okay, puberty blockers, facts, since some people keep getting it wrong. Puberty blockers don't, those stupid anti-science people keep getting it wrong. Puberty blockers don't freeze anyone forever. They simply pause puberty. So young people with gender incongruence, this seems to be the new term that people like to use, the transes and
they love to change their language. Yeah.
Gender incongruence. Young people with gender incongruence have time and proper clinical assessment, as if there's ever proper clinical assessment. There's been so many examples and, testing of these processes just to show how easy it is for kids to get on puberty blockers and hormones. And, there's no real clinical assessment. And in Canada, it's actually illegal to do anything except for support and encourage the transition of a kid who says that they're trans. You're not allowed to say, maybe you're not trans, or let's wait and see. That now constitutes conversion therapy.
Yeah, I live in an affirmation only state as well, where it literally on par to gay conversion therapy. If you tell a kid maybe you should pause and think about it. And maybe these are sexist ideas leading to you to believe that you're in the wrong body. Right. So it's not even allowed to, kids aren't given space to even consider that they might be pausing to then continue in the sex they are, right? It's affirmation only.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, everything, everything shows, including, if you talk to detransitioners about how easy it was for them to trans, as it were, they talk about, there being no genuine assessment. You can just show up at the clinic and be like, I think I'm trans. And then you get a signed piece of paper that says, okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
It says, okay, you're trans, you're on puberty blockers, here's your prescription. So it says, the rest of the tweet says, if treatment stops, puberty restarts. If they start gender affirming hormones, they go through the puberty that matches their gender, full stop. And then it says, this is standard medical care, not the horror story or abuse some people like to invent. But that I thought was interesting. If they start gender affirming hormones, they go through the puberty that matches their gender. Like, what is that? What do people think that the purpose of puberty is? It's like, well, you don't become, if you're a girl and you're on testosterone, you don't go through puberty as a man. You don't suddenly become able to, like, you don't become an adult male who can now impregnate a woman because you produce sperm.
No, you can induce opposite sex, secondary sex characteristics in a pubescent body. You can create endocrine disruption in kids, but you can't turn a female into a reproductively viable male. Like, no, that's not the whole point of puberty, is to turn us into reproductive age, right? To get us to the point where we can reproduce successfully as mature members of our species, because that's what all species do, is live to, like, reproduction is a big part of why we're designed the way we are. It's so madness. And I'm so tired of this topic. I'm just so tired of all of it, because it's the same people who tell us that also a man can be a woman without doing anything. Like, he doesn't even need to take estrogen or cut his penis off, or like gender isn't about how you present sexually. It's different from sex, but with kids, it's necessary to induce cross-sex development in them. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's so that they look pretty and sexy. This is always, or almost always, with regard to boys who transition because they want to become girls, or an adult tells them they're actually a girl or whatever. I kept seeing posts online too of, adult, young adult transes who supposedly are very pretty and hot. To me, they still look like gay boys for the most part, because, they were allowed to go on these puberty blockers and hormones when they were minors. And they're saying, like, this is what you get. Like, it's an advertisement, right? Like, you get
exactly.
This, like, hot lady boy. Like, I don't know. I don't know what you're supposed to call these kids, because they and because they're asexual.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's like what you've produced, like asexual eunuchs. Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, they're producing eunuchs, and you want them to be attractive to men who are attracted to prepubescent eunuchs, right? Like, that's what they want. Remember when Brianna Wu, so that's a man who fantasizes about passing, right? And he puts so much energy into pretending that he passes with the filters and all the facial feminization surgery. And his whole public persona is trying to get people to, look at this image he presents and say, you would never even know. So that's a big part of his fetish for himself. And he's so invested in these trans kids because it's exactly what he wants. Like that's what he wants, is this fantasy that you can actually turn a male into a female and no one will know the difference, and you could be sexual. He's said if we want more Hunter Schaefers, we have to allow pediatric transition.
Yeah, maybe Hunter Schafer is this person I keep seeing online. I'm not up on all the young trans celebrities or any of the celebrities, but I think it must be this boy is an actor. Is that right?
Yeah, he's an actor.
Okay, yeah, it is. I just Googled this American actress and model, and supposedly he's this really hot, pretty beautiful trans lady.
He was, castrated as a child, and I don't know if Hunter Schafer's had facial feminization surgery, because often even these boys who are given puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and orchiectomies as children, that male bone structure still comes through by the mid-20s, late 20s. You can't entirely feminize their bodies. So Hunter Schafer looks to me like he's also had facial feminization surgery, though most people in Hollywood have had, at this point, even the actresses in their 20s have had plastic surgery and got 25-year-olds getting Botox, so yeah, Hunter Schafer supposedly passes and is hot, and men like Brianna Wu hold Hunter Schafer up as the ideal of what they're all striving for, to be desired, because they're part of their autogynephilia is to be sexually objectified. That's what they want.
Yeah, I mean, he still does look boyish to me, but yeah, I'm sure that he's had many, many, many surgeries, in addition to having been trans, I think in grade 9 or something like that.
Right, and he's probably a late bloomer, just looking, well, I don't know what he looked like at that point, but he doesn't look to me like a kid who was shaving in 7th grade,
No, I'm reading about him on the internet. He started experiencing gender dysphoria in 8th grade. In 9th grade, he came out as a transgender girl and began transitioning after being diagnosed with dysphoria. So in grade 9, you're like 14 or 15.
Yeah, and a lot of boys are just starting to develop. That's an interesting age for boys, where they're all over the place developmentally in early high school. I know Exelancic has done several episodes pointing out that Hunter Schafer has a very disturbed way of walking. His gait, he appears to be in pain, and pointing out that these treatments done to children harm their bones, they harm their joints. Again, all these women who were put on these puberty blocking drugs for precocious puberty now have joint pain and hip pain and difficulty walking. Why wouldn't the trans kids be having that? The number of women I know who were blocked and put on cross-sex hormones who walk with canes and walkers and have terrible time walking in their 20s is way disproportionate to the regular population.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that people say in defense of puberty blockers is they say, oh, well, they already use these drugs to treat like kids who are, is it usually girls that they're treating who are experiencing precocious puberty?
Sometimes
so what does that count? Like, what does that constitute? Like, how young do you have to be going through puberty too early to the point that they would put you on puberty blockers? Do you know?
Like breast buds before age 8. Because the range of normal for getting your first period, even if you look at obstetric and gynecology texts from 100 years ago, the range of normal has remained the same from 9 to 16. 9 seems really early, but it's normal. It's not outside the range of normal. 16 is pretty late, but it's not outside the range of normal. So if you're looking at a 6-year-old with breast buds and body odor and getting pubic hair, that's a girl that is going to get her period before age 9. She's going to have short stature. She might have endocrine issues, social problems. So they might offer that family puberty blockers. But it's not done cavalierly in these situations where there's actually an endocrine problem happening with this child. Those situations are pretty rare. What I have seen more just because I have a child who's a brain tumor survivor, is a lot of kids with brain tumors in the midbrain have precocious puberty, both males and females. And I watched families in that community, just on listservs I was on, just, I lived in that world unfortunately for a long time. I watched families agonize about putting their kids on these drugs. And they would bring out the evidence of how, a lot of people who've had these drugs now have chronic pain. They have chronic bone problems. They have psych issues. People whose children were actually experiencing symptoms of going through puberty at 4 or 5, 6 years old were agonizing about the decision whether or not to put their children on these dangerous drugs. And we're putting healthy kids on these because they want to shop in the wrong aisle of the toy store, because they want to wear different clothes, or they like the wrong, or
so they can be hot and sexy when they're adults. Like, as a parent, is that really something that you feel comfortable saying about your boy when he's 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever? Like, oh, we should put him on these puberty blockers so that he can look hot, like, hot when he's 19 or 20, like hot like a girl, like,
right, and have no libido and have no sexual response, be completely incapable of orgasm.
Like,
well, they'll turn the micropene into a fake vagina through,
if that even works,
with using parts of his colon, because there's not even enough tissue from his scrotum and penis to invert that. This is mad scientist demonic shit. Like, this is just so wrong. I just can't believe we're still having this discussion.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking about, when I said that, what happened to Jazz Jennings, which is that they were never really able to create a neo-vagina, I guess is what they're calling it, because he hadn't gone through puberty. So there wasn't enough material to work with, as it were, to invert into a hole that would be used for sex and
men to masturbate with his body.
I don't want to call it a vagina, because it doesn't function in any way like a vagina.
No, it's not. It's a intercourse hole. Like, it's just so disgusting. Gross. And again, like this, I just want society to move on from this madness. I can't believe anyone is still defending this. They're sterilizing children. They are stripping children of all sexual function. They're creating eunuchs, and people are still defending this.
Yeah. And I remember in 2017 when they put that young boy, Avery Jackson, on the cover of the National Geographic.
Right.
Like, in pouting in pink hair. Like, even the photo was weird. Do you remember that?
It was a very sexualized photo. Like, he is all, and young girls have been sexualized for a long time, but not in National Geographic so much.
It was a really big photo.
Yeah, it was. He's
for people.
Yeah, very sexualized and pouting, and and the whole article on, there's new evidence about transgender children. I actually had multiple people bring me copies of that, saying that there was new evidence, and maybe I was wrong in my thinking for speaking out against transgenderism, because National Geographic says trans kids exist. So how's he doing now?
So he was on National Geographic at 9, and I remember blogging about this at Feminist Current, and how horrific it was that National Geographic was treating this as some kind of celebration of what. But so he was chemically castrated and sterilized with Lupron, and at 15 he decided he was coming out as non-binary. He's 17 now. At 15 he decided he was coming out as non-binary and taking on another name, which he started to feel really uncomfortable with, and my impression was angry and regretful that his whole life had been public in this way. And wanted to go back to privacy, so changed his name to something else, and complained about the book that had been written about him. Obviously, he didn't write a book about himself at that age. And is identifying as asexual. He's been fully desexualized as a 17-year-old boy, which, you really should be experiencing the opposite thing at that age.
Exactly. Right. Like having to really work to think about anything other than sex. It's just really what's normal for 17-year-old boys is to be thinking about sex constantly.
Yeah. So he's been sterilized and
and neutered.
Yeah.
And the whole world knows he has a micro penis because he was never allowed to go through puberty. And I mean, was he pulled off the puberty blockers? Does he appear
We
to be
don't
on
know.
cosmetics hormones?
We don't know now. We don't. Yeah. So now we don't. Yeah. The mother has agreed. I'm assuming based on his request to not talk about what's happening to him medically, publicly anymore. So we don't know if he's still on hormones or anything like that. But it's really too late. And I think he's sadly, I don't like to say this out loud, going to have a pretty tragic life.
Yeah. All of these kids will. Like this is horrific what's happening to them. Yeah. I just don't know how anybody is still defending this.
Well, and so now, the weird thing, the reason why I say, like I keep thinking it's done. And I really do think that it is on its way out. Clearly, it seems like everybody's waking up to the fact that this is a horror show, and unethical in every possible way. But there is still this new King's College puberty blocker trial. It's called the Pathways trial, and it's going to involve 226 minors under the age of 16. And they're going to put them on puberty blockers and then monitor them for 1 or 2 years under the trial protocol and see what happens. So, but I mean, this whole thing is pointless because, I mean, first of all, I think we already know what happens. But even if we didn't, this isn't a long-term study, so this doesn't help. So you see what happens into the whole. It's always been a problem that there's never been any long-term assessment of these kids. There's only ever been short-term assessment of these kids, and the kids are saying, "Oh yeah, I'm happier now." A year down the line, we don't know what's happening to them in 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 years.
Right. No, we don't. And nobody's interested in doing that. And it's all Wild West, free for all. Like there's no possibility of collecting long-term data because it wasn't set up that way. It's like the COVID vaccination. Like we will never know what that actually did to people because no one is collecting any data on it. And it was set up as a big uncontrolled experiment that it was impossible to ever get good data on it, right? This is the same thing, that this is just madness, what's happening.
Yeah. And then, I read this over at sexmatters.org. They explain that the primary measures of outcomes is something called the Kids Screen 10 test, in which the children will be asked questions such as, have you felt full of energy? And have you had fun with your friends? As though that assesses anything of substance at all in the short term. And again, when you're talking to minors. So and not looking at long-term impacts physically or obviously the impacts on their sex lives or adult relationships or anything like that. So I don't know. I mean, if this is, I think it's a totally pointless study, and one wonders why they're doing it, I suppose, in the hope that they can prove that actually some kids do need to go on puberty blockers because it makes them less suicidal or it helps with their mental health or something sort of, wishy-washy like that.
Wonder, how did things work out for the children who were turned into eunuchs in the past? How did it work out for the castrati? How did it work out for the other eunuch children in history? It'd be so fascinating to see if there are any historical records from those people. Did any of the imperial eunuchs who were literate Do we have any of their diaries? Do we have any chronicles from them? It'd be really interesting, because it's not new in history that the ruling class, that predatory men with sexual fetishes are turning boys into eunuchs. This has been going on throughout history in multiple places. I just can't believe that people can't see this is just our version of that.
I don't remember what I was watching, probably some weird conspiracy theory show or podcast or something like that, but they were talking about, I think that they were implying or questioning whether, that sort of thing had happened to Michael Jackson, because he grew up to be so feminized and maintained this like beautiful voice that could sing high notes. And, his brothers turned out to be regular masculine looking guys. But, I think people, whatever it was that I was watching, which I, semi-convinced by, to be honest, because it is weird that he was very feminine. Like, his body was very feminine, his face was feminine, his voice was feminine. Wondering if his dad had sort of put him on some sort of drugs when he was a kid to maintain.
I think Michael Jackson was a child abuse survivor for sure. And the dad was very exploitive of all those kids, but especially Michael, because he was he was the shiniest of all of them, right? He had the star power. But the Thriller LP, like that, like he was, I don't know if he was manly in that, but he had sex appeal to women. He had muscle definition. He still had his normal facial features. It wasn't until he started feminizing his own face, and he got weirder, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows what's going on? I don't know. I can't go. I have enough rabbit holes. I'm down. Yeah.
Well, go down that rabbit hole. I might go down a little bit more. It seems sort of semi-convincing. If you have a question in the live chat, please use the super chat so that we see it. I can see somebody talking about a thing in there, but I don't know what the original question was. I did want to address with you in particular the update on the Free Birth Society story. In The Guardian, they published a big story. We talked about the Free Birth Society. It must have been last month,
right after the Free Press article came out,
maybe early November, maybe sometime in October. Essentially, it's a scam. That was what was uncovered, which I think many of us already knew. And, people have started calling it a cult, which, I'm glad that somebody finally noticed this, because it was been, those, I didn't know Emily, is that the girl's name? Right. But, Yolande was giving off, cult leader vibes for years. And just becoming increasingly more, to me, seemingly enraged and kind of unhinged and high on her own supply, but also like completely unwilling to accept or hear any kind of criticism or questioning, only accepting of accolades.
Right.
And they, it sounds like what happened. Did you read the Guardian article? You did. You sent it.
I did. I thought it was an amazing piece of investigative journalism. I was really impressed with it. It made the Free Press article look like something they threw together in a couple of days, which, I get it. Journalists often are working on deadline, but those two women researched that for a long time. They contacted me so many times asking me to be on record for that story, and I just wasn't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not willing to do it. I'm not interested in taking down Emily and Yolanda. But I have to say, when I made the decision not to talk to them, I had multiple reasons. One was they refused to acknowledge certain social factors that led to the growth of the Free Birth Society and led to it being such a social phenomenon. One being the massive influence of gender ideology in all the other online birth spaces, and that the Free Birth Society was a refuge for women who were gender critical to be able to speak their minds about the mindfuckery of gender and to not be jumped on every time they used female language to talk about birth. So the Free Birth Society Facebook group grew and grew and grew out of that issue. Like it was a refuge of sanity for women in the birth world. They were absolutely unwilling to discuss that. They said it was, basically it's a toxic issue that they didn't want to even mention. And they refused to talk about COVID and how the social isolation of women that was imposed on them by the government was one of the reasons women flocked to online spaces, and that the Free Birth Society was the only big birth space and women's gathering space that was COVID critical as well. So you have women who disagreed with gender ideology and women who disagreed with the governmental response to COVID found a lot of solidarity in Free Birth Society, and the Guardian authors weren't willing to touch that. So I just didn't want to talk to them. But I thought they did a really good job with it. I had no idea the depths of the depravity in the Free Birth Society. I had no idea that they were telling women to forgo first aid at births, like things that I would just consider human first aid, like putting pressure on something that's bleeding or resuscitating a baby that's having a hard time breathing. Like I had no idea they were telling women that there was never any reason to go to the hospital, that they were encouraging women to stay home with insanely high risk dysfunctional situations. It was so much worse than what I even knew about in my own dealings with Emily and Yolanda and with women coming in and out of Free Birth Society.
Yeah. Can you tell people who are watching some of the specifics about what they uncovered?
The story starts with the story of a woman who had a long dysfunctional labor and then shoulder dystocia, which is when a baby's shoulder gets hooked on the pubic bone and the head delivers, but the body can't deliver. It's an obstetric emergency. There are very simple maneuvers that can often free the baby, like getting on your hands and knees or standing up or putting one leg high on the bed, like in an exaggerated lunge. That often will change the dynamics of the pelvis and the baby will be freed. The Free Birth Society told women there's never any reason to distrust the process and to let the process unfold as it's unfolding. So when this woman is having an obvious complication, it took 17 minutes from the baby's head to deliver until the body delivered. Anything over 5 minutes is considered a problem where the baby's likely to need resuscitation. 17 minutes. She finally pushed hard enough to get the baby out. She probably pulled her legs back or something and changed the diameter of her pelvis and got her baby out. And then the baby was born not breathing, in apnea, in distress. And the leaders of the Free Birth Society have been telling women that it's wrong to intervene with the baby's natural transition into breathing, that resuscitation is a violent intervention on the process. And so no one did anything for more minutes while this kid is gurgling and barely present. And then finally the mom's instincts kicked in and she attempts to resuscitate her baby. A friend who's there, who's all indoctrinated with the free birth craziness, wakes up from it too and starts Googling how to resuscitate. They call an ambulance. The baby did not die, but is neurologically devastated, is severely brain injured.
Mm-hmm.
That was, that one. Many, many stories of long dysfunctional labors.
Yeah, one of them was like one woman was in labor for 5 days.
5 days, yeah, which is crazy.
I didn't even know that was a pain.
Well, it's dysfunction. It's not supposed to be happening. But these are also women who have been told by Emily and Yolanda that doing anything to try to augment labor or get labor moving more is a violent intervention. So they're not even doing simple ancient tricks like nipple stimulation or drinking teas or anything. At 5 days, you have to go to the hospital and call it. But water's broken for 7 days. So when the amniotic membrane ruptures and your waters break, that's what we call that. The fluid is supposed to be clear, and if it's not clear, if it's like brown or green, it means the baby has pooped inside the mom, usually because of distress, and that's an ominous sign. It's not good. Sometimes, it just happens, and if the baby sounds fine and is moving, we can progress and assume the labor is going to be okay, but we're going to be really monitoring. These are women where the water broke and it was clear. 2 days later, meconium shows up, an obvious sign the baby is distressed, and Yolanda and Emily are telling them that's just a variation of normal. 2 days after that, the amniotic fluid starts smelling bad, and the mom has a fever, clearly developing an infection, life-threatening to both mother and baby. And Emily and Yolanda told this woman that it was still a variation of normal and to stay home. That particular mom finally went into the hospital, and the baby was dead. Delivered a stillborn. She remained loyal to Emily. The story I always heard was Emily said, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't talk to this woman in labor. I didn't really know her. She was just a member of the Facebook group. It turns out that this woman actually has texts where she's been texting with Emily all through her labor, and Emily's just telling her everything's normal, as she's having this 5-day labor where she's clearly developing fetal distress and an infection.
And Emily asked her to tweak the story to the journalist.
She asked her to tweak it to the hospital and say that it had only been a day since her water broke. And then she asked her to lie to, I think it was the Daily Beast. Yeah, the Daily Beast covered that story. And the woman told the Daily Beast that she hadn't spoken to Emily, and Emily did the same. And I had believed Emily about that. I had no idea that wasn't true, that she'd actually been advising this woman to stay home with this completely dysfunctional, dangerous situation.
And it sounds like they were making many millions more than probably anybody imagined.
I knew they were making millions. I had done the math myself and just knew they were making millions of dollars. So I used to refer women to the Free Birth Society when it was a podcast of women telling their unassisted birth stories. It was, when that podcast started, I thought it was great. It was women who on their own had come to the decision to just have a birth outside the system, and they would tell their stories, and it was amazing. And I would advise women, wherever you plan to birth, whatever you want, even if you want to plan cesarean, listen to these stories, because it's really cool to hear that it can just happen this way. And then it stopped just being a podcast, and it turned into a business where it became like a paid group online where women had to pay $600 to join the group. And then it became a cult. I mean, really, it wasn't something welling up inside individual women. It became, they sold it as something cool to do, and we're brainwashing women into believing that there's never, ever a reason to seek medical attention during pregnancy or birth. Another story of a woman who developed severe preeclampsia, which is a metabolic condition in pregnancy where the blood pressure rises, you start swelling, there's the liver dysfunction happening. It's life-threatening. And the only cure for it is delivery. You have to get the baby out, and then it resolves. It's like you're allergic to the pregnancy would be one way to say it. It's not quite true, but the only way to cure preeclampsia is delivery. You just got to stop being pregnant. This woman was swollen. She was another one having a long labor. She developed preeclampsia so severely, she was seizing and went blind, and they told her it was a variation of normal. Like, on what day, what planet, what reality is it ever normal to go blind and have seizures? If you were having seizures and going blind, something is really wrong, pregnant or not. Something horrible is happening to your body, and you need to go to the hospital. You need to address that. And they told her to stay home.
Yeah. So what do we think is going to happen here?
Well, I mean, if they've
are they going to get sued, do you think?
Oh, I think they're going to be civil suits for sure. I mean, it sure sounds like it. I don't know if they have any money. I think Yolanda has money, but I don't know. She comes from more money than Emily. What I've understood is Emily's kind of blown through her money, that she didn't manage her money well. And I don't know if there's money there, which is often the case with gurus. There was that guru, James Arthur Ray, who killed those people in the sweat lodge in Sedona. He told them all he was a billionaire. It was a money-making wealth cult, like The Secret, and if you think the right thoughts and you do the right thing, you'll be a cajillionaire like me. He told them he was a billionaire. When the deaths happened, he wouldn't let people have a sweat lodge. And like Emily and Yolanda, kept telling them, it's normal to feel like you're going to die. It's normal that you think you're dying. Just stick with it. And then they actually died. There was no money. He had no money. It was all a ruse. So often these con artists have just blown through the money. So I don't know if there'll be any justice there. I don't wish for vengeance against them. I wish people would stop falling for con artists.
I know, me too. It's very frustrating to watch because it seems obvious. When you can see it, it's hard to unsee it. Those kinds of personality types, the cult leader types, the con artists, the grifters. But people seem to love those personality types often.
Yeah, people do. A lot of people want to believe someone else is closer to God than they are, more in on the secret than they are. And people fundamentally don't trust themselves. People like to join things. I'm so the opposite. Like, I could never enjoy myself.
I'm not a joiner.
No, I just remember.
And I'm like inherently skeptical. I feel like if somebody tries to sell me something, I don't want to buy it. Like,
every time I'd go to a Grateful Dead show, I'd be like, this just feels like a cult. I can't have a good time here. Yeah, I can't believe how bad it was. I split with them over certain things. When they started their radical birth keeper school, I reached out to Emily and Yolanda when they started this 3-month online $6,000 program telling women they could be an authentic midwife if they took their online 3-month class. And I expressed my hesitations to that. They told women they didn't need any clinical experience. They didn't even need to have ever attended a birth before to be the best kind of birth attendant there was, an authentic midwife, a radical birth keeper. They didn't like that feedback, but we stayed we stayed cordial. And then in my community, there were things that landed in my lap to deal with because of these radical birth keepers trained by Emily and Yolanda, who didn't know what they were doing. And things went to hell. And then I'm getting called and I'm having to manage train wrecks that are not of my creation. And I really appreciate that. And I wanted to talk to Emily and Yolanda about it. And instead of talking to me, they took all my feedback back to these women who I have no issue with these naive young women. I want Emily and Yolanda to stop encouraging innocent-minded, naive people that they could just go to a birth and know nothing and everything's going to be fine. Instead, they created more discord in my community by telling these women what I had said about them, of my issues with it. And I was pretty angry. There were things that landed in my lap. That was everything worked out okay in the end, but I was having to really work hard to save people's lives, and that in situations where this could have been prevented. This did not need to. This was an emergency that was of Emily and Yolanda's making, in my opinion, or if they're the making of their training of these women. And that's when we split, and I just kind of stopped paying attention so much. I just kind of went on my own way and thought, well, they are making money hand over fist. And I'm just kind of shocked at how this is going, but I didn't realize they were telling women there's never a reason to go to the hospital. It's madness. It's like telling someone who's going on a backpacking, week-long backpacking trip in the Grand Tetons, oh, if you take a first aid kit, it means you don't trust the process, or how dare you have a satellite phone with you? Don't you trust the process? Like, it's crazy to eschew first aid, which is what I believe birth works really well. And I think most people are intelligent enough to gather the first aid skills necessary to safely attend a birth for a normal low risk woman. and to also have kind of a rubric of, if we stay in these parameters, everything's going to be fine. Like, I trust birth, but they were so crazy about it. I just can't even believe how crazy they were.
Yeah, well, and then on top of that, wouldn't really let anybody talk about all these things that were happening. The women would get banned from the group if they would
Yes.
bring up these complications or the fact that this baby died, or ask any questions about, anything that was going on, really. So
Right. They would kick them out of the group. And if anyone recommended something medical, they would silence them and delete their comments, where there were cases where women chimed into the online community
and said,
saying,
go to the
my baby,
hospital.
and go to the hospital, or call somebody. And their comments were deleted and they were kicked out of the group if they kept going in that direction.
Yeah. This is a really bad story.
It's so bad. So I knew it was bad, but I had no idea it was this bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think I'm disappointed in those reporters for just blaming these two women who really were kind of con artist gurus, and not looking at the cultural factors that pushed women into this, which they did cover obstetric violence. They did cover the fact that women are having really crappy experiences in mainstream obstetrics, but you can't underestimate how appealing it was to join a community of women who understood biological reality and weren't going to jump all over each other if somebody said something like women give birth, or
Right.
and you can't underestimate how much the COVID madness drove women to want, again, a like-minded community of women who thought it was nuts to mask toddlers and isolate women. And
and the women were already being isolated, and if they did go to the hospital, they would be isolated. I mean,
yes,
you have to wear a mask in the hospital while you're in labor, and I think that experience became even more horrible under COVID. And they're isolated from talking to other pregnant women, other mothers.
Right. And the same thing, like, you're not allowed to talk about it. Like, there was so much censorship around any critique of all of that craziness. And what was happening in the hospitals and the birth centers was just as crazy, just a different kind of crazy, as what the Free Birth Society gurus were pushing, where here, the local fancy birth center was making women wear masks in labor, but they could take it off during contractions. Just
so sick,
completely irrational and insane, and makes no sense at all. That's when she's yelling. That is when, like, during a contraction, you're roaring. That would be the time it would make most sense if a mask actually worked to make her wear it, just like spewing her viruses with this big birth roar. And then she's quiet in between with all the endorphins. And just, I mean, I felt like euphoria in between contractions. It was amazing. You're not yelling during that time. You're breathing very peacefully. So there was craziness societally that drove women to this craziness.
Yeah. Well, thank you for covering that. I'm glad that you're here to talk about that whole experience. And yeah, for people who want to read that story in The Guardian, I posted in the live chat, and I'll post it in the show notes after. I think they're releasing a podcast as well about their investigation into the Free Birth Society, in the Guardian Investigates podcast. And yeah, they did a good job. So I was impressed by that.
I think they did an amazing job. And there were countless women who had equally horrifying stories who didn't want to talk to them. Like this, their outcomes are horrific. I mean, the number of babies who died is like a higher infant mortality rate than in like the Middle Ages. Like this, because back then women had midwifery skills and knew how to intervene and get, know how to get, suction a baby out and give some breaths. They were refusing even basic ancient ancestral women's birth interventions. They were telling women
Well,
to
and they were so critical of midwives who'd gone through the system too, that I think that at these births there was nobody present to intervene. Like they didn't know how to, there was nobody trained to intervene because none of these like supposed midwives went through any actual training. They just took this online course.
Right. They told women that any intervention was bad and was going to mess up your birth, and was like that. Like it really was a cult of not doing anything with birth.
Yeah.
And in the past, unassisted childbirth, there's a small subset of women who just want to be left alone when they're birthing. That's just throughout human history. There's some women that don't want a midwife. And it was a really small population of women. And usually those women would do a ton of reading, and they would have, if their partner was going to be there, that everyone I knew who did an unassisted birth, like had their partner read spiritual midwifery and emergency childbirth. And they'd be prepared for things like heavy bleeding or a baby that was a slow starter. And they'd have an idea of what the parameters of normal are, the same way you do when you're raising a child. It's like, if my kid falls off the trampoline and a bone is sticking out, I'm not just going to let nature take its course. Like it's not a failure to go to the hospital if you need emergency medical care. These were, in my experience, smart women, many of them midwives themselves, who just wanted to be left alone. And this is a completely different phenomenon. They're brainwashing naive women into believing that if they just think the right thoughts, birth will work just fine, and you never, ever, ever need to intervene.
Well, hopefully they stop now that all this has come out.
I know, right? Well, Yolanda's been purged from the Free Birth Society website. So they've apparently had some kind of falling out. And now the Free Birth Society website is just all Emily. Yolanda has gone into a new cult. Like she is, I hate to say this, I think Orthodox Christianity is actually really beautiful. I love iconography, as you know, I think it's actually beautiful. But I think the way Yolanda's doing it is kind of cult-like. So she's getting hyper religious and says she just wants to withdraw from the internet and have her 11th baby in peace. So I don't know. They look like they've had a split to me over the stress of this. Anyway. Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I'm sure there will be more to come on this matter. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Mary Lou, while we're here?
No, I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're here every Tuesday evening now it has now become, because you all keep changing your times, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Mexico time. And Mary Lou's on Substack. If you just search for Mary Lou Singleton, her website is enchantedfamilymedicine.com. Find me on Substack at meganmurphy.ca. Please become a paid subscriber to support my work and get early access to podcast interviews and paywalled articles. I post these podcasts completely unedited, just to warn ya, on Spotify and on Substack under Where Are All the Women, of course. And I'm on X at Meghan E. Murphy. Mary Lou is on X at ML_Singleton. And we'll see everyone next week. Have a great night.
See you. Bye.